So China is spoiling for a conflict, and conflict means financial ruin. Just ask Israel. Their war on Hamas has now reached 137 days. Gaza's economy is virtually wiped out. Gaza is wiped out. But Israel too is feeling the heat. Their latest GDP numbers are out, and I must say it does not look good for Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel's GDP fell by around 5% in the last quarter. That's from October to December. They fell by 5%. It's much worse than expected. Most experts had predicted a 2.6% drop in GDP, but the actual fall is almost twice that. What explains this? In one word, war. Before the Hamas attack, things were fine. In 2022, Israel's economy grew by 6.5%. That was the pandemic rebound. In 2023, the projection was 3.7%. But on October 7th, Hamas attacked Israel, and Israel responded by waging war in Gaza, so the economy crashed. Let's look at some individual indicators. Private spending dropped by more than 26%. Exports dropped 18%, and capital investments fell by almost 68%. Let's call this the war effect. Two sectors were most affected by the fighting. One, the construction industry. It makes up 14% of Israel's GDP, the construction industry. And two, the tech industry, which makes up 18% of the country's GDP. Both sectors struggled with manpower. You see, Israel had called up some 300,000 reserve soldiers. 3 lakh soldiers for you and me, that may not sound like very much. But Israel's total population is just under 10 million. So the workforce shrank. The tech industry lost 15% of its workers. In construction, many projects had to be halted. Before the war, Palestinians would travel to Israel for work, both from Gaza and the West Bank. But after the war, that stopped. So the two main engines of Israel's economy struggled. Add to that war expenses. Israel is living near Gaza and Lebanon. Israelis, rather, living near Gaza and Lebanon had to be relocated. That meant housing subsidies. Many families also needed financial support. After all, their breadwinners had been recruited to fight. And finally, you have direct military spending. Guess how much the total bill is? Possibly $70 billion by the end of 2025. Compare this to the other nation at war, Russia. You would expect them to be worse off. A, they face a stronger adversary in Ukraine, and B, they face hundreds of sanctions. Yet, Russia's economy is actually growing. Their GDP rose by 5.5% in the last quarter, 5.5% growth. What does that tell you? For starters, Russia's economy seems more resilient. Putin has spent years preparing for this scenario. They also have a trump card, oil and gas. Every month, Moscow gets billions of dollars from energy sales. That's a comfort that Israel does not have. Secondly, population size. Russia has some 144 million people. Israel has just 10 million. Hence, the different economic trajectory. Having said that, it's not game over for Israel. The ground operation should wind down later this year, meaning the reservists will go back to their jobs. Plus, we haven't seen a corporate exodus. It's not like companies are packing up and leaving Israel. In fact, some of them are investing more, like Intel. In December, they announced plans for a new factory in Israel, a $25 billion project by Intel. So the belief is that things will improve in 2024. Let's also hope it's a learning curve for Israeli politicians. They can't afford to think war is good business, because in small countries, it's not. If a war with Gaza was this bad, imagine a wider war. Imagine full-blown fighting with Lebanon. It would crush the Israeli economy. So that's one more reason for Prime Minister Netanyahu to reconsider his strategy, if not for Gazans, then for his own people.